So as we're all aware, PBC is a slowly progressive, for most, autoimmune disorder that affects the small bile ducts. And it can, if not, stopped in its progression, lead to cirrhosis, which then can lead to decompensation and cancer. And we absolutely know that if you appropriately treat people and you get them into biochemical remission, which is essentially normalization of their numbers, subnormal total bilirubin, that is highly associated with a decrease in progression. Ursodeoxycholic acid is a long drug, long-standing drug. We know that it works for many of our patients, but there's a population that just never achieved biochemical remission on urso. And then there's another population that have biochemical remission and for reasons that we don't really understand, kind of lose that over time. And we know that dose escalation of urso just isn't going to capture those patients. So it's not like we can just give more and expect it to work. We are very lucky in that we do have an approved second-line therapy and then 2 newly approved second-line therapies. And we need these in those individuals who are going to progress. If we don't find a way to prevent progression, we know that we're going to let them become ill over time when that could have been stopped. Although Obeticholic acid has been around for a while, it's kind of been on a preliminary trajectory with the FDA. That being said, because we've had it so long, and because about 1/3 of our patients may not have, biochemical remission with ursodeoxycholic acid, and even more importantly, our understanding of what biochemical remission has looked like has been revised. We used to be a little more liberal with what we thought were okay labs, and now we know that that's not really okay. And so a lot of our patients really have required obeticholic acid to get those numbers into a better range. We also understand that even with the addition of obeticholic acid, some of those patients really don't normalize as well as we would like. And so third-line therapies should be part of that conversation, not just second-line therapies. But I have a sizable portion of my population of PBC patients that are in biochemical remission on ursodeoxycholic acid plus obeticholic acid. There's also been a subset of individuals that just don't tolerate urso for reasons that we can't always predict. I mean, we think it's a pretty tolerable agent. It's old. We kind of expect the side effects. But there are some people who just really cannot manage being on urso, and obeticholic acid has been the only option for them. Yeah, so most of the time when we're looking at a clinical trial or when we're looking at the patient sitting in front of us, we're going to use a surrogate for an outcome as our grade, right? So it's kind of like getting graded along the course before you take the final, and then you figure out if you pass or not. And so normalization or improvement in your liver enzymes is a surrogate for a clinical outcome such as decompensation or progression to cirrhosis or development of liver cancer. And so what the FDA would like, or what the ask is how does that surrogate line up to those outcomes? And when they looked at the data for obeticholic acid, they just really didn't find that obeticholic acid was associated with an improvement in those surrogates. That does not mean that it did not lead to biochemical remission. We have a lot of data on obeticholic acid, and it does work in some patients to achieve biochemical remission. Now, I think there's context here, right? So obeticholic acid is not appropriate for people with portal hypertension. So it's not supposed to be used in the patients that are most likely to have advanced disease. And someone with advanced disease is going to be more likely to have progression and decompensation. And so I worry that maybe this is a little short-sighted because they're grading the outcome on a long-term surrogate, right? Most of our patients with PBC don't get outcomes in 5 to 7 years. They get outcomes in 10 to 30 years. And so when you're looking for benefit in something in a semi-short period of time in a group of individuals that might have been a little bit healthier because that's how we use the drug, maybe it's too soon to see that signal. And, ultimately, it might not be the only signal that we care about. If we also look at some of the, extrahepatic manifestations of Hep C or that biochemical remission, knowing that other studies have showed that that's highly associated with long-term outcomes, I think that's equally important. I think it's really important when we're looking at the tools we have for PBC that you also have a conversation about fibrates. In Europe, because the EU does have another PPAR, benzofibrate, available to them. And in the US, we do not have that. We have fenofibrate, which is also a PPAR. Some of our patients are on, triple therapy. They're on ursodeoxycholic acid, obeticholic acid, and fenofibrate, which is off-label use. And clearly, if you read the package insert, kind of contraindicated for PBC. So I am not advocating that you use fenofibrate in a way that the company would not want you to use. But some of my patients are on that combination. And when you remove obeticholic acid, knowing that I needed all three in order to put that patient in a clinically appropriate place, or a place where that person had better labs, which we are using as a surrogate for outcome. If I remove the obeticholic acid, I'm not going to add another PPAR to fibrates. So I would probably stop my fibrate and then start a second line therapy. And I don't know what that looks like, right? And so some of our patients that are doing well on obeticholic acid are going to be a bit of a clinical conundrum, because we don't know that stopping that and then starting them on a different second line agent is going to achieve the biochemical remission that they might already have on that agent. So I do understand the EU and the FDA's reasoning. I just think that it's going to leave a portion of our patients in a bit of a lurch. I would say that if we lose obeticholic acid as a treatment option, individuals who are newly diagnosed with PBC or are not achieved biochemical remission but have not started a second line therapy now have really an obvious choice. They're going to start on a PPAR that is approved therapy for second line, and you're going to see if that then helps them achieve biochemical remission. If those two agents don't work, then we're going to be, a little bit stuck, because we are not going to have a third agent for them. And in full disclosure, obeticholic acid has never been looked at as a third agent for a person who has failed ursodeoxycholic acid with a PPAR. I think our biggest question is going to be how we manage those patients that are clinically doing well on obeticholic acid, knowing that that's not been looked at and it doesn't have a clear alternative. If a patient's not doing well on dual therapy with ursodeoxycholic acid and obeticholic acid, well, then you probably are going to stop it and flip and start a different second line therapy. But, it's not a small number of patients that are actually in biochemical remission on OCA.